Hey, it's Aldo from Zero to Mastery, and in today's tutorial, we're diving into web typography. Now, this isn't just any tutorial. It's part of Jacinto's complete CSS Bootcamp course available on Zero to Mastery. So if you want to enhance your CSS skills, click the link in the top right-hand corner or check out the description below for access to the full course. All right, that's it from me. Let me hand it over to Jacinto. Enjoy.
Okay, so in this video, we're going to be diving into Google Fonts. Right now, we're in the knowledge section of the Google Fonts website, and it has some great information on choosing font types, which we're going to go through. It also has a lot of other information here as well that you can feel free to look at on your own. Okay, so choosing font types. So when you have a text, how can you choose a typeface? Many people, professional designers included, go through an app's font menu until they find one that they like. But the aim of this module here is to show that there are many considerations that can improve our type choices. By setting some careful constraints to aid in our type selection, we can develop a critical eye for analyzing type along the way. Okay, so we're going to go through this, and we're going to go this checklist here for choosing type. It will kind of cover all of these topics here, but you can go through each of these separately to get more information. And then they also have a glossary of terms that they are using throughout. We talked about M units in the previous lessons, and they have some more information down here at the bottom. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on this checklist here, and we're going to go through this article. So this is designed to be a useful guide. You can see we have essential terms over here, and we're going to just go through this. So there's a checklist itself, and the idea is we need to think about certain things when we're picking a font. So the first thing we want to think of, does the typeface suit the purpose of the project? So types definitely set a tone and personality, and we definitely want to keep that in mind. We wouldn't use Comic Sans for something very serious. We might use it for something that's catered more to children. Again, we don't want to use a decorative font for the main body text. You can see we have a glossary here. Body referring to the main text in a piece of content. And next, the typeface's design is comprehensive. So it needs to be legible. It should have at least basic weights and styles, so being able to have a bold version, an italic version. Even better, it has alternate glyphs, and it also has additional weights and styles. It'd be great if it has multiple widths. We'll get through all of this, and we'll go through this on Google Fonts as well. It will actually show you what is available for each font. Number 3, the font files are reliable. So they want to meet this checklist above, make sure that the fonts are properly spaced, they're readable. And number 4, that they're usable in the situation required. So there needs to be a suitable balance between if you're using multiple fonts, that's very important. And lastly, we need to make sure we have the appropriate font licenses. Okay, so let's explore each of these in a little bit more depth. So number 1, typeface suits the purpose of the project. So you can see here that we have a bunch of different examples here. So we have a playful font, we have a wistful font, we have a contemporary font, handcrafted, friendly, strong, etc. So you can see just by looking at these fonts that they do have their own unique personalities, and people will associate certain things with them just by looking at the type of font that we are choosing. And as I mentioned, we have an example here of Comic Sans. So again, Comic Sans might be perfect for a children's activity timetable in a school. I definitely saw that a lot when I was in school, but it's not appropriate for announcing a scientific discovery. So something to keep in mind, you need to have the type that is appropriate for the content that you are trying to show. So its design fits the intended use. So again, as we talked about, if we're using this type of font here, this might be perfect for a title. It is very stylized, it's decorative, but again, you shouldn't be using it for large chunks of text because it will be very difficult to read. Number 2, the typeface's design is comprehensive. So it's great if it has multi-language support, meaning that it has characters that have accents. Not every font does, but something to keep in mind, especially if you're going to use it in a language that has accents. It contains legible details. So this is referring to legibility. And for example, if there could be a font where the uppercase I, this vertical line, and the number 1 all look the same, but we want to be able to tell the difference between them. So on the right here, we have an uppercase I, and we have a vertical line, and we have the number 1, and they're very distinct, so it's very easy to tell them apart. So that is something to definitely keep in mind. It has at least the basic weights and styles. So again, we want a regular, an italic, a bold italic at the very least, if we're going to be using it for multiple things within our website, if we're using it for a header, subheader, body, other stuff like that. Even better, it has alternative glyphs. So this is referring to having the smaller, if we're using like 1/4 or things like that, that is definitely helpful. If we have some alternate numbers here. And even better, it has additional weights and styles. So you can see a great example here of the typefaces Lato and Epilogue. So we can see that it is very, very bold. So it has a very high weight here. And then you have a very, very fine version of it, very low weight. And this is great for hierarchy and emphasis. There's also the idea of having multiple widths. So there can be a narrower version of a font and a wider version of a font. So the extra wide face is great for titles and things like that. And a narrow typeface would allow you to fit more characters per line, more words per line. Something to keep in mind. A font can also have different optical sizes. So in this case, the text is actually kind of more squished together in this top one, and then by the end, it's actually a little bit wider. So this can be good again for using one font. They have the source here. One font for everything. You can see we have our main title, our subtitle, and our body, but it all looks a little bit different, and our footer, and it all looks slightly different, even though it is only using one font. Okay, number 3, fonts are reliable. So this is important to keep in mind that we actually have all the features within the font file that we're using. So it's important to consider if we are using a pro version or a non-pro version. There are fonts that you can actually pay for, so there are premium fonts, but there are many fonts that Google Fonts will offer for free, and that's the ones we're going to be looking at. Something to keep in mind. And it's also important to make sure that the fonts are properly spaced so that they are readable. You can see that there's kind of some weird spacing happening here. We have a lot of spacing here, but then the A and B are very close and the A and D are very close together. Definitely something to keep in mind. And number 4, the fonts are usable in the situations required. So there needs to be a suitable balance if we are using multiple fonts. You can see here, this is a great example of using 2 different fonts. We're using one different font here for emphasis. They don't match exactly, but in terms of the X height, but it is something that ends up fitting very well if it's just shifted a little bit. And the stroke weight appears approximately the same, so they do look like they go together. And yet, lastly, yes, making sure that we have the appropriate license for our use case. Okay, so that's basically it for our checklist. Let's actually now dive in to Google Fonts themselves. First, I want to mention there is a resource that I discovered as well that is kind of curating the fonts that are trending. So, and specifically, it is targeting free fonts. So, this website is called Typewolf. And again, I'll provide a link within the course. And you could get a zip file of all these 40 fonts and have them locally, and then add them locally to your project if you sign up for their newsletter. And you can see that it has an asterisk to indicate the family is body text friendly, meaning it contains regular, italic, and bold styles, and has low to moderate stroke contrast, large counters, open apertures, and a large X height. So these things are all factored in when considering what makes a good body font. So you can see that this asterisk down here at the name shows that it is a good body font, and you can see that it has a preview for everything here. If we scroll down, we have some very different examples, but you can see and get an idea of some fonts that are trending and popular right now. And now we're actually going to go to Google Fonts itself in the Fonts section. So when you first land on the page, it might look different by the time you're looking at it. They do seem to change the layout of this quite a lot, but this is what it looks like right now. On the left side, we have a pane here that we have a preview. We can type something. We'll do that in a second. We have a slider where we can adjust the font size so we can make it look more like our title. We can have a filter for language, so we can support different languages here. We have the ability to filter variable fonts or color fonts. So these are more for, some very stylistic titles. We have our serif fonts. We have our sans serif fonts. We have our handwriting fonts. We have our monospace fonts. I have to reset my filters. Well, reset all. We have our monospace fonts. So monospace fonts are important to note. They're used in every text editor we would use for coding, so CodePen, Visual Studio Code. Basically, what monospace means is that every character takes up the same amount of width, so that if you're writing code, everything is going to line up with each other if you're looking vertically. I'll show you this in a moment, but something to keep in mind. It's very good for coding, and it can also be good for readability, but you don't necessarily need to pick a monospace font to achieve that readability. Okay, so those are all the filters we have here, and you can see we can also sort. Right now it's sorted by trending, but we could sort by most popular instead. And our goal at the end of this module, the very last lesson, is we're going to create a minimalist website using Google Fonts for our typographics company. And the cool thing is you could type anything you want. So anything you want here, and it will automatically type it in all of these fonts. And then you can just scroll through and see which ones you like. So that's very, very handy and a quick way to preview many fonts at once. So let's say we just want to put in our company name here, and we can just scroll down and actually see what it would look like in all these different fonts. You can also see that it notes how many styles it has available. So our font weights are bold, italic, regular, etc. So that also gives you an idea of which fonts would be good for body text. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, so I also have in mind a list of fonts. So we're just going to test out here. And we're going to open a CodePen project in order to show how we're going to import them. So I'm going to go ahead and actually search these fonts. So the first one is Nabla. And we're going to go ahead and click on this font. And when we click on it, you see that we have a sample here. And we can scroll down and we can see that we have just regular. There is no other type, but that's fine. We would only use this obviously for a title of some kind. So I'm going to go ahead and click Select Regular, and there's a plus sign here. You have the option also of downloading the font, but we're going to be importing it into our project directly from Google instead of downloading it. So you see that we can embed a font using either a link or we can use an @import, and this will go directly into our CSS file. You can see that we have our font right here. And the cool thing is we can actually add multiple fonts to one import statement. So I'm going to go ahead and search the other ones that I like. So there's one called Tilt Neon. This is the one here. And we're going to scroll down. And you see that by default, 120 pixels. Again, this one only has a regular. And we're going to go ahead and click Select. And you'll see that it adds it here for me to review. And you can see in my import statement, I have Nabla here and I have Tilt Neon here. It doesn't specify the font weight or style because both of these only have one style. Okay, and we'll continue on. It's a couple more. Silk Screen. It's another one that I like the look of. Again, very stylized. These are good for titles, all of these. You can see in this case that it has two different styles. So I'm going to go ahead and select both. And you'll see that it actually specifies weight at 400 and 700. So this will show you which styles you're actually importing per font as well if you were to actually read the import statement very closely. And we'll have a couple more. Alumni, Sans, Pinstripe. Okay, yeah, it filtered that. And again, this one has two styles. It has a regular 400 is the weight. That's the font weight in number, and an italic. So let's go ahead and add both. And we'll add one more font, and it's going to be called Outfit. Okay. And yeah, I like the look of this one. And you can see that this is the first one that we have a lot of different versions of. So we have a 100 weight, which is a thin font. That's the thinnest it can go. We have an extra light, which is 200, light, which is 300, regular, which is 400, medium 500, semi-bold 600, bold 700, extra bold 800, and black 900. So this essentially is every possible weight that we can have. You can see that we don't have any italic, but we have all of our font weights accounted for here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the thin, the regular, and the bold, let's say. And again, you can see that our import statement is getting a little bit larger here. But again, we can import all of these in one statement. And then it also actually tells you the rules to apply. And it even has the different fallback options. In this case, it's not just sans serif. We have some cursive fonts here as well as the fallback. And one last font I'm going to add as well. We'll go back to our fonts page here and we'll go back to filters. I do want to add a monospace font as well, just to show how that works. So we'll go with IBM Plex Mono. Why not? Okay, and we'll go ahead and we'll just add the regular here. You can actually see it right now if I scroll down. Even though we have a thin font here, an italic font here, and then as we keep going, you can see that the eyes are all lining up with each other still. So it doesn't matter what the weight is or if it's bold italic or whatever, all of these monospace fonts will always line up every character, capital, no capital, font weight doesn't matter. That is the whole point of it being a monospace font. Okay, and you'll notice that my sidebar at the right here has disappeared with my import statement. To get it back, we are just going to click on this icon here, View Selected Families, and you can see that all of the fonts that I previously selected are here. And if I scroll down, you see that I can go back and grab my import statement. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And we're going to go over to CodePen. Okay, so you can see that I've just prepared an H1 and a lorem paragraph of text. we set our font family to Helvetica, and we have a width on the paragraph of 50 characters. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and paste this import statement. I usually like to put it as the very first line in my CSS file. Okay, and now let's test it out here. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first one of na blah. We're going to do it in single quotes, and boom, there we go. We have our font there. We can go ahead and change the font size if we want. So let's say we want this to be 50 pixels. Yeah, so we can see it a little bit better there. Okay, very cool. Let's try a couple other ones here. So we can actually read our import statement here. And we have our family of nabla that we've just used. And we'll go to the next one of outfit. And you can see this one, we have our 3 different weights, 100, 400, and 700. So by default, an H1 is bold. So it's going to have a font weight of 700. And you see when I do that with Nabla, nothing happens because we only have our one style. But if we go ahead and we type in outfit, you'll see that that's already 700. I can prove it by just commenting this out. And you see that that is 700. But I can go ahead and I can make it a lighter font weight if I like. So I can go 400, or I can even go 100 to make it very, very thin. Okay, so that's how our font weight will work. And again, you can read it off the import statement. Okay, the next one we're going to go with is going to be silk screen. So I'm going to comment this out for a second. So we have silk screen here, and we have 400 and 700. And you'll see that I can change this now. So again, there is no 100, so that's going to default to 400. You see that it got a little bit thinner. So yeah, that's the 400. And then we can go back up to 700, have the full weight here. You can see that this width of this text is wider because we still have it at 50 pixels, but you can see that it has broken onto 2 lines, unlike the previous. And next, we'll try our tilt neon, and we won't worry about the font weight here. Of course, when you're experimenting with Google Fonts, feel free to choose any font that you like. I am just choosing ones that I like, but feel free to choose whichever fonts that you would like. There's a lot of options. Okay, and there's one more title font we're going to try out, and that is our Alumni Sans Pinstripe. And this one has the option to be italic as well. So font-style, italic. Okay, cool. So we have seen all of our fonts here. I'm going to go ahead and leave that one as it is. And the very last thing I want to show is our monospace font and how that will look in our body text. So I'm going to change this font family here, and it's going to be IBM Plex Mono. And you'll see that everything does line up. I'm going to maybe change the width to just be 500 pixels. We're going to have a straight width value. And you can see that everything is lining up with each other. It's not actually necessarily lining up at the end, but if I look down, it's a lot easier to see everything being lined up, and everything just has that nice spacing to it. Even our capital letter M here is actually centered on the comma that we're seeing on the line below. Okay, very cool.
And that wraps it up, everyone. A big thank you to Jacinto for guiding us through this lesson. Want to dive even deeper? Well, lucky for you, there's a whole lot more to learn in Jacinto's complete CSS Bootcamp course, linked in the top right-hand corner and in the description down below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on future tutorials from Jacinto and other expert Zero to Mastery instructors. That's it from me. Keep on coding, keep styling, and I'll see you in the next one.